Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the board meeting, and also we have resumed telecasting this report live. So welcome to all the viewers sitting at home and watching this fascinating conversation on the police board. And I do want to acknowledge and welcome Manny Rodriguez, who's been acting deputy for a full 6 weeks or so. So welcome, deputy. Also like to acknowledge and welcome Mike Sharp of the association, and Randy Patrick, president of the Officers Association. Welcome, gentlemen. So today's meeting begins with Section 10, Caledon OPP, and we would like to welcome Inspector Carruthers. So it's yours, Inspector.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Prior to me just getting into the numbers there, Chair, I've brought a few people with me this morning that I'd like to recognize that have recently got promoted at our office and part of our command team. And first officer here sitting right beside me is Marcus Sanderson. You all know he's been at our board meetings before. Marcus recently got promoted to Staff Sergeant in charge of operations at our detachment. Marcus is a graduate of the University of Toronto, BA in anthropology, and served 13 years as commissioned officer in the Canadian Armed Forces Reserve. He retired with the rank of captain and joined the OPP in 1999. Marcus spent the first 8 years assigned to Port Credit Detachment, the Highway Safety Division, and held various roles. Marcus transferred to Caledon in 2007, where he served Caledon community for the last 10 years. Performing several duties. He was a successful candidate in the applicant in the most recent competition of operations manager, and received his promotion. And it's my honor, and I think the citizens of Caledon, that he's remaining in Caledon and serving in that role. And this morning I brought his actual warrant card and his badge that I was going to present to him. So congratulations, Marcus.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
He's been in the role for the last 16 months, so it was well deserving.
We have gone to know him quite well, so personal congratulations to you, and on behalf of the board, congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before you start, any other introductions?
Yep.
Okay, sure,
Yep.
Go ahead.
I brought another officer. This is Officer Kathy Kimos. Kathy started her career in 2001, serving almost 8 years with Peel Regional Police before transferring over to OPP at Caledon Detachment in 2008. And Kathy has held various roles, including coach officer, general frontline duties, school resources, and was selected to attend Quantico FBI Academy as part of the firearm validation process that we are going through to select our new firearm as we moved into the firearm into the OPP. Kathy was one of 9 provincial officers who competed for sergeant position in our detachment and was a successful candidate, and was promoted shortly afterwards and remains in Caledon. So Kathy, you can stand up. And the third officer, but certainly not the least, is Sergeant Aaron Koch. Aaron joined the OPP in 2007 after graduating from Sheridan College, started his career in Caledon, and he'd had various positions throughout his career as coach officer, technical collision investigator, and community response unit supervisor. And Aaron also competed out of 9 provincial applicants and was a successful candidate and promoted to sergeant in July of 2017, and remains in Caledon supervising frontline positions, and that he's also part of our command team. So Aaron, congratulations. So that's it for the introductions there, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll now refer to the OPP Caledon agenda, and roll call. All present except for Mr. Prazeres, who unfortunately for us, but fortunately for him, is stuck in Bahamas. And any declaration of conflict? None? Okay. The first item is approval of the minutes. Can I have a mover? Yeah. Pardon me?
I just wanted noted that I was on other municipal business
Okay.
for being absent at that moment.
Okay. Motion for, you got a motion? Norma Nicholson? Ms. Mitchell? All in favor? Carried. We've got the report, we've gone through that, but can you take a minute or two, Inspector, to just tell us if there is any highlight that you would like to point us out to?
Yeah, the report, we weren't here last, as you know, Police Services Board meeting, so we're behind a couple, but as far as reporting, but our violent crime has gone down 12% year to date, which is a real good figure. The rest of the figures on the sheet pretty well relatively stay the same as far as year to date. But I would like to mention, and I'm certainly subject to any questions on the report, but I would like to mention some of the things that we've been doing in Caledon for the last, probably over the summer. We've had town hall meetings at 4 different wards throughout Caledon. We've had coffee with council, and that's where council goes out to different various locations across our communities, and we join up with them, and we just sit and have chat with community members that come in and have certain questions, whether it's policing or on the town side. Caledon did a commercial motor vehicle blitz on September 12th and 13th, and we had 44 officers in attendance from across pretty well the GTA, everyone from Halton Police, Waterloo Regional Police, York Police, Peel Police. It was a very successful operation that we had back in September. November the 7th, I was down with our commissioner down at Toronto Police Headquarters, where Mad Canada was kicking off the campaign, and we actually had one of our officers was selected out of 3 officers provincially to receive the Mad Canada Award, and was recognized at that kickoff. So that was his officer was PC Archie Diaz from our office, and he was recognized for the aggressiveness of impaired drivers that he's taken off our roads in our community. So that was an honor for us to be down there. As you know, we did the budget presentation last week, November the 16th, here. Regional Council was successful. September 21st, we held our annual golf tournament, where all proceeds were lent to locally to Caledon Community Services, and a board member attended. Appreciate that, and we were able to raise a little over $10,000 for charity at that event that we released to Caledon Community Services. We have a 1,000 square foot office space going in Southfields Community Center, where we attended the groundbreaking ceremony on September 11th. So that's located at the corner of Dougal Avenue and Kennedy Road in Southfields, in the new complex there. So we've been allocated a 1,000 square foot facility in there for our officers to report into. So that's pretty exciting. We had approximately 3 experienced officers arrived at Caledon, some from Peel Police and some from Toronto Police Service, over the last 4 months. We've been down in the community doing our action plan presentations throughout the summer. September 27th, 29th, we held a detachment commanders conference, which we attended to in Niagara Falls. That's where all the detachment commanders get together across the province and go over some trends and some issues. October the 1st of this year, we attended the Commissioners Officers Conference, and in Alliston at the Nottawasaga Inn. That's where all the commission officers across the province get together and strategically held discussions around strategic plan and other commitments. On October 4th, we attended the mess dinner. That mess dinner was held again in Nottawasaga, and that's where we welcome all new commission officers across the province that got their commission, so that was exciting. September 30th, we attended the Provincial Auxiliary Conference in Orillia. As I mentioned last week, we do have Shop with a Cop event coming up again, and welcome any board members that want to attend that at the Walmart. That'll be on Saturday, December 16th. We also have the Bolton Santa Claus Parade coming up, and that's occurring on December the 2nd. The streets are usually packed, as you can imagine, with that event. November 1st, we had the annual kickoff for our United Way campaign that's just wrapping up, very successful. Just last weekend, we had a basketball game with our OPP officers and Shay's Place in Bolton, and that was very successful. September 8th, we met with Boys and Girls Club of Peel as they're returning back to Caledon, and we began good working relationships between Caledon, OPP, and the town on that. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Inspector. Chair Dale, do you have a question or observation? Oh, Norman Nicholson.
Thank you for the report. In my heart, I think about folks with mental illness all the time. I'm wondering what is happening in Caledon. There was a recent report called Overview of Mental Health Addiction System in Peel. a region of Peel perspective, and it identifies where Malton, Brampton, and Caledon has the longest waiting list for folks with mental illness. So I'm just wondering if you're seeing an uptake in the number of hours that your officers are being called, and how are you managing that? Do you ever take them to the merge department and have to wait long hours? Just a little bit of update,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, thank you for the question. I think basically we're talking about the transfer of care protocol that's happening all across the province, and certainly Caledon OPP is affected by that, by any other municipal police service. And our transfer of care protocol, as far as our time wait to the hospital, it's been a significant challenge for many years. I believe the average time right now is around 2 hours and 20 minutes, Marcus, somewhere in that area, which is a significant improvement from even a couple of years ago. When 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, we used to have to be in the hospital up to 4, 5, 6 hours, waiting for the hospital facilities to take care of the patient, right? And then there are other issues that are drawn from that, of course, when we're in a hospital with a person. So. Probably in the last, I'm going to say 15 months, the times has decreased to roughly 2 hours and 20 minutes, which is good. We're still waiting for protocol to be signed by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Community Services regarding signatures at that level. I believe once those signatures get put on paper, then it will drive down the necessary changes that municipal police services and hospital facilities will start engaging in meaningful dialogue in order to move the bar forward, in order to get our wait times decreased. Because when we got officers tied up in the hospital, and I know I've been there myself, I've been pulled up there, I've seen our officers, I've seen Peel cruisers in the hospital parking lot, and sometimes there's 3, 4, 5 cruisers there. And those are officers that are taken off the road, out of the community, to wait on processes in the hospital. Marcus, you want to comment any more on that?
I think I might just add that we do have a partnership with CMHA Peel, which partners a mental health crisis worker along with a police officer that do outreach within the community to try and divert some of the non-emergent issues away from frontline police response to the appropriate medical supports within the community. So that has helped, along with adoption of some standardized processes with the hospitals using the Interray basic mental health screening form, which is a standardized intake form that we provide to hospital staff from the frontline officers to sort of speed along the intake process. But it's still a challenge, and it's an area that certainly requires improvement. And I know all municipal police agencies are in the same boat as we are, and hopefully, as the inspector said, that change is going to be driven from the top down, and we'll start seeing those wait times decrease.
Thank you.
Any other question or comment? Can I have a motion to accept the report? Sue McFadden, Chair Dale, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming, and all the best.
Thank you.
And congratulations on promotion for all 3 of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now we go into the Peel Police Board agenda. Before that, Chief, you want to share some story with us that you're proud of that your folks did over the month?
Good morning, Chair. This actually wasn't recent news, to say, but I sent it to you a while ago, and I just wanted to acknowledge Detective Geraldine McNulty, who's in the audience. Geraldine, you want to just come on down? Just I know it's a little awkward for you, I'm sure, just to be recognized, but to say, I think we can't underestimate. So, Chair, as you're aware, just to give you a short recap on this, Geraldine is a detective. She was working in homicide at the time, was working under the major case management philosophy is that she was assigned as the victim liaison when there was a homicide, and the victim's family were challenged by the fact that their loved one had been murdered. It was a very difficult homicide, and say I received such a complimentary letter about Detective McNulty following a lengthy homicide investigation and then trial. And I say it's very rare that family members reach out and write such a lengthy, compassionate letter to talk about how they would not have been able to survive this ordeal without the care and compassion of Detective McNulty. So the letter was so complimentary. I mean, I know Geraldine really well. I just thought it was important for the board to see that. These are the stories that don't often make the news. And I say it's important to know that, you know, victim liaison is, you know, we have victim services appeal that we work with, but officers also take up the position of victim liaison and victim caregiver to family members who've suffered tragic events. And I say Detective McNulty did an outstanding job. So I thought this is one to highlight for the board today. So.
I certainly echo the points that you made, because I read that letter several times because it made me feel good. And it's out of a tragedy you demonstrated, I think, and I had a fortunate meeting with you a couple of days back for the first time, and that we are becoming more and more and more of a service orientation. And I think your act, over a number of years, it wasn't just like a one day or one evening, over the number of years, how they remember you, how they know you, and it creates the image of the police being caring, being human, and you held their hand, and in one sentence, the family said something like, "You are an angel." So thank you very much for what you did, and you make everybody look good. Thank you. So roll call again. We have Mr. Prazadas away. Any other conflict of interest? None? Okay. So we start with approval of minutes of September 29th meeting. Motion to Sue McFadden, seconder. Linda Jeffrey, all in favor? Carried. Consent agenda. In accordance with the board's procedure policy, we will now move to the consent motion for the consent agenda. This agenda deals with items considered routine and non-controversial. And if there's any item that any member wants to talk about or has questions, we'll take them out and deal with under new business. Does any member wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? I see nodding heads. That means no. All right. Then can I have a motion to approve items 108 through 117? Chair Dale, seconded by Sue McFadden. All in favor? Carried. So we'll now move to the board, to the deputations. A reminder that deputations will be limited to 5 minutes in accordance with the board's procedural policy. I will alert you after about 4 minutes to give you a kind of a notice to wrap it up. Our first deputation is Ms. Catherine Soplet. Welcome, Ms. Soplet. And push the yellow button to be able to speak to the mic.
Can you hear me? Yay. Thank you very much, and through you, Chair, I'm so happy to be here today. I'm just going to, of course, read off my computer that isn't cooperating with me at this moment. Hold on. Okay, so I'm here to speak to you today about the Peel Youth Charter. The Peel Youth Charter was unanimously endorsed in 2007, October the 25th, by the Region of Peel, the municipalities, 2 school boards, and the police services boards. This is my 6th presentation since November 14 of a template PowerPoint to endorsers of record and successor agencies of the 2007 Peel Youth Charter. The template presentation is rich and detailed and will be filed with the clerk with my speaking notes following this presentation. Let me begin by saying it is time to choose action and recognize that this is Bullying Awareness and Crime Prevention Week from November 20th to the 24th. As many of you know me, I'm Catherine Soplet, a 20-year resident of Mississauga. I'm a former music instructor for young children and founder of Building Up Our Neighborhoods initiatives for civic engagement. My advocacy efforts to promote public education and public libraries were recognized in August 2017 with an invitation to join the inaugural Community Advisory Group of the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and I attended its first summit earlier this month in Toronto. Today's presentation will focus on the 2007 Peel Youth Charter. I have some asks of the Police Services Board. I will tell you some background about the Peel Youth Charter. There are impacts since 2007, which are positive, and in 2017, we have reasons to move forward. So on October 25th, 2007, an exceptional event occurred at Peel Regional Council that pledged a bold standard for a better future for all youth and children across Peel. On that day, an unusual and unanimous endorsement was sealed by 11 Peel Region partners across all levels of government, public education, policing, crime prevention, and human services. All parties agreed to support and enact a trifecta of youth-focused documents: the Peel Youth Charter, the Peel Children's Rights Charter, and the Peel Youth Violence Prevention Strategy. So my asks of the board today are, in 2017, to continue endorsement of the Peel Youth Charter, to refer to the Peel Police Services Board its endorsement, to the Chief of Peel Regional Police and the Commander of the Caledon Detachment of the Ontario Provincial Police, and to authorize the Chair of Peel Police Services Board in 2017 to sign the Peel Youth Charter with other civic partners. What is the Peel Youth Charter? The GTA context for the Charter is the 2005 Summer of the Gun. In 2005, the Summer of the Gun spike in gun and gang violence saw headlines in Toronto and increased gang activity in Peel. By 2006, Peel Region Youth Violence Prevention Committee had crafted the first youth crime prevention strategy in the GTA. The Charter came from recommendations contained in the Peel Youth Violence Prevention Committee 2006 report, Toward a Bright Future for Peel Youth. So, again, to restate, unanimously endorsed by 11 civic partners, the Peel Youth Charter. So that was Peel's regional and municipal governments, both the school boards, both police services, and charitable agencies with a focus to help youth and crime prevention. The Peel Youth Charter states these rights apply without discrimination or prejudice to all youth in Peel. By signing this charter, we are committed to use best efforts to ensure safety, health, education, and future employment of Peel's youth. So why in 2017 do we wish to continue our endorsement of the Peel Youth Charter? Well, first of all, there have been changes in leadership. There is only one signature that is still standing from the chair of the Peel District School Board. There have been elections and numerous changes. Some key impacts are listed in the template presentation with many details. One important one I wish to draw out is in 2013, the efforts of the Peel Youth Charter were reflected in the Advocacy of Fair Share Task Force, which brought millions of dollars in funding for youth mental health and youth outreach workers. I just want to take a moment to commend the current mayor of Brampton, who was instrumental at the time in her role as the MPP. Research shows that literacy lowers crime rates. Efforts of the Peel Youth Charter are reflected in agencies such as Safe City Mississauga, which established its Aspire Tutor program and works in partnership with Peel Regional Police to increase student achievement and measure that crime is lowered in high-risk neighborhoods. Peel Child and Youth Initiative was able, through alignment with the Peel Youth Charter, to attract funding and continue activities.
Ms. Sablik, can you wrap it up, please?
Thank you. The reason to continue our best efforts with the Peel Youth Charter is that it aligns with the current code of the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and that as the Human Rights Commission evolves the code to include equity and inclusion and to focus on Indigenous reconciliation, criminal justice system, education, and poverty, that by continuing endorsement of the Peel Youth Charter today and referring so that authorized representatives can sign the charter, that we will be ready following the 2018 elections to continue good work of the Peel Youth Charter and help youth to succeed through ensuring safety, health, education, and future employment.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Mayor Jeffrey?
So I don't have any questions. I'm just wondering what would the proper procedure today would be to refer this deputation to staff to come back with a recommendation on how we would endorse this report. That be appropriate? So I'd like to move that, and I thank you for coming and presenting and being a champion on this issue for a long time. Thank you.
I'll second it.
As the mayor said, we'll follow up. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Second deputation is Ms. Ursula Cooper Bennett of Mississauga Watch. Welcome back, Ms. Cooper Bennett. Please go ahead.
I think you have practiced this dozens of times, so it's just going to be a little bit over 5 minutes, like 5:15. Okay? It's like, pardon?
Can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, I've practiced this dozens of times, and it'll be about 5 minutes, 15 seconds. But I'm reading it really fast. I don't know if you're going to...
It's 5:15, sure.
Okay. In my January 2017 deputation, I informed this board that Peel Police kept blocking my street check for related Freedom of Information requests and forcing me into appeal after appeal to the Information and Privacy Commissioner. And boy, did you people ever fool me. I didn't know until mid-October when I received yet another Freedom of Information access denied, this time slapped with a frivolous and vexatious claim that I finally figured out it wasn't PRP blocking my street check FOIs, but the head, the chair of this board. I now realize it was the chair and this board who delegated the chief's lawyer, Linda Bordelot, to fight my appeal and write, quote, "We do not see a public interest," unquote, in 4 disputed records in a row. Well, the IPC disagreed and, quite the contrary, ruled that the records had compelling public interest. And Record 4, that secret 2014 Peel Police Street Check Board report that you showed no interest in, revealed all manner of violations of the Police Services Act, the Ontario Municipal Act, Ontario Human Rights Code, Peel Police Directives, Policies, and Code of Conduct, not to mention board adequacy standard policies, for example, management of police records. By far, the most profound violation revealed in your secret 2014 Peel Police Street Check Board report relates to records retention of street checks, PRP 17s. On page 16, under the heading Records Retention, the secret 2014 report states, quote, "There is a retention schedule for street checks and is in occurrences section number 302090101. The retention period is no charges event plus 1 year, charges event plus 5 years, V-class event plus 50 years. Niche is not subject to the retention schedule as a module is not built into the system to manage retention of records," unquote. Now contrast no charges event plus 1 year with what Chief Evans and then Inspector Ingrid Berkeley-Brown reported in September 2015. Regarding retention of PRP 17s, they wrote, quote, "These records are typically retained on an indefinite basis unless statutory requirements dictate otherwise. An environmental scan with surrounding police agencies revealed that information collected through their street check processes is also retained indefinitely," unquote. I immediately filed Freedom of Information for the actual Peel Police records retention schedule just to see the thing with my own eyes. Summarized from the Peel Police record retention schedule for PRP 17s, page 100. Office of Primary Interest, Criminal Investigation Bureau. When charges laid, total, event plus 5 years, disposition method instructions, ERSH. When charges not laid, total, event plus 1 year, disposition method instructions, ERSH. ER means erase, shred, and SH, shred. So you all did your best to keep hidden from the public that Peel Police street check forms and their related personal information were not supposed to be retained indefinitely as Evans and Berkeley-Brown claimed, but had a precise destruction schedule. For how many years has the Peel Police covert non-compliance to its PRP 17 street check retention schedule denied tens of thousands of people their right to be forgotten? The right to service of having their personal information expunged as per existing legislation. And you yourselves know what community PRP 17s affect the most. Chief Evans and Berkeley Brown said there were 130,024 street check contacts between 2009 through 2014. Contacts. That's people carded. I have no idea how many of those 130,000 had erase rights of event plus 1 year, but can tell you that some who were charged are now past the 5-year retention and should have had their PRP information erased. Regarding the ministry's new street check regulation 5816, Chief Evans wrote, quote, Peel Regional Police will commence a process to restrict access to the legacy street check data. Unquote. You gotta love calling years of non-erased PRP 17's legacy street check data. As for will commence a process to restrict access, the majority of the chief's almost 200,000 legacy street check data should not exist. Page 10 in the 2015 street check process goes on to lie. Quote, currently there is no mandatory requirement necessitating regular review and audit of street check forms within the system, unquote. There were mandatory requirements in that Peel Police Records retention schedule and in the board's management of police records, which state, quote, the chief of police shall, B, ensure members act with full respect for human dignity, unquote, and, quote, the chief of police shall regularly review collection, security, retention, use, disclosure, and destruction of police records as may be required to ensure the integrity of the police service directive and or procedure, unquote. So there were mandatory requirements. That's it. I hope I did it in under 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Panda Cooper. Chief or Linda Bordlow, you have any comments?
No, I have no comments, Chair.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Questions? Move the motion to receive this deputation. Sue McFadden, second by Frank Dale. All in favor? Move. Thank you. We move to presentation, and the first presentation today is Understanding Fentanyl. Chief, would you like to introduce the presenter, please?
Chair, I was wondering if I could just jump ahead to do, we've got Lieutenant Colonel Armstrong here from the Canadian Forces. He just wants to come down and do a quick presentation just to save him. Good morning, sir. How are you? Welcome. Thank you very much for coming. Program or cadet organization program. So thank you very much for coming, sir.
Great. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Morley Armstrong. I'm here representing the Canadian Forces Liaison Council. Chief, if you could just stay here as well.
I feel like a little underdressed here. Sorry, sir. I should have worn my number 1.
Well, we have our headdress on. So.
Thank you.
I'm here representing the Canadian Forces Liaison Council. The Canadian Forces Liaison Council is a joint military civilian organization that attempts to facilitate employer support for reservists. The Canadian Forces has got a huge reserve component, and most reservists have full-time civilian careers. In order to have a successful civilian career and military career, plus balance families and everything else, that requires some important understanding on behalf of the employer. So what the Canadian Forces Liaison Council attempts to do is to try and facilitate that support, and like this morning, to then recognize employers that go above and beyond to support their military employees. Peel Region, by my numbers, has approximately 40 to 50 constables or policemen and women who are members of the Canadian Forces, either cadet instructor, cadre officers like Captain Mohammed, or primary reservists. And it is critical for the Canadian Forces, and I'll use Captain Mohammed as an example. So he's currently the commanding officer of the Mississauga Cops Cadet Corps, which is a very famous cadet corps. And I guess here's, ma'am, the support what your support does. So Captain Mohammed's corps has about 200 youth. A little bit, not an exaggeration, but you'll appreciate where I'm coming from. I would argue that the future of our country is our youth. And when you have officers like Captain Muhammad, who are responsible for the 200 cadets within his corps, and developing their self-discipline, their self-confidence, all of those attributes that are going to make them better Canadian citizens. That's the future of our country. And so Captain Muhammad and his staff do that, but he's only allowed and is successful doing that with the support of Peel Region Police. So ma'am, so what I'm going to do is present you a certificate on behalf of the Canadian Forces Liaison Council to yourself, Chief of Police for the Peel Regional Police, in recognition of your contribution to Canadian Forces Reserve for assisting Captain Paul Muhammad. And although Paul's name is on this, he's the one that actually nominated you, I would argue this is on behalf of every Peel Regional Police person who is a member of the Canadian Forces. So your contribution for supporting the Canadian Forces is duly recognized, and I totally appreciate your support.
Thank you very much.
So let's, ma'am, if you want to hold that, and Paul, do you want to just? You're not in the middle. Who do you think you are?
Now I have a smile.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and we all appreciate your gesture. All right, can we have the other presentation now? Chief, sure.
A lot of news on the opioid crisis and fentanyl, so Inspector Saliba's on a lot of committees within the region, and so I thought it would be good just for the benefit of the board to just provide a little background information on what Peel Regional Police are involved in with regard to this ongoing and increasing issue. Thank you, Toffer, for coming this morning.
Thank you very much, Chief. Good morning to the board. I'm just going to bring the presentation up on your screens. Thank you. The presentation is about 10 slides long. It's going to cover a definition of fentanyl and opioids in general. We're going to look at legal and illegal forms of fentanyl and what we find out in our day-to-day duties. I'll get a little bit into some of what we call analogs of fentanyl, including carfentanil and W18, which are even more powerful drugs that law enforcement is starting to see across the country. An important part as well is naloxone and how it's being used as a primary form of treatment for opioid overdoses. And then some of the partnerships that Peel Regional Police has entered into with various stakeholders across the region and across the country, really, to help address this problem. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have either during the presentation or afterwards. Quite simply, opioids, as defined, are substances that act on the opioid receptors in the body. They attach themselves and give the person taking them morphine-like or euphoric effects to varying degrees, depending on the strength, of course, of the drug they've taken. It's originally medically intended for use in pain relief. Illicit fentanyl, or legal fentanyl as we call it, was first synthesized in Belgium in the 1950s, used primarily in anesthesia during surgery and pain management. We most commonly know it in the community, or see it in the community, as patches or transdermal, which means it's absorbed through the skin as prescribed by doctors. It's also seen to varying degrees in different forms, including lozenges, sprays, and liquids. It is, a lot of people don't know, 100 times more powerful than morphine and quite more toxic. It's part of the opioid family, which includes codeine, morphine, oxycodone, and methadone. The other type of opioids and fentanyl that we find are the illicit or illegal type. It is, quite frankly, at the root cause of the crisis that has been identified not only in North America, but in countries across the world. The majority of illicit fentanyl, law enforcement in Canada has found, comes primarily from China and to a lesser extent from Mexico. It is very easily absorbed through the mucous membranes, the eyes, the mouth, inhalation, and can also be absorbed in skin, especially in open cuts. Law enforcement has found it often concealed, seized when it's been concealed in such items as jars of printer toner, CDs, or really any innovative way that the criminals can find to get it into this country. Because of its extreme power, it is often mixed by people in the criminal organizations with other drugs like heroin and cocaine to try to reduce some of its potency, while at the same time increasing the high for users. To give you an idea of exactly how potent it is, you have a picture in front of you. If you can see it in a fentanyl sample, of how little it takes really to prove fatal to people who take fentanyl. This is the pure form of fentanyl compared to heroin. As you can tell, it doesn't really take much heroin to be fatal as well. A lethal dose of pure fentanyl is approximately 2 milligrams or 32 grains of salt. Some of the immediate effects of opioid overdose, and our officers are trained to recognize this, are, as you see, slurred speech, severe drowsiness, slowed heartbeat, respiratory distress, unsteadiness on the feet, and low blood pressure. A lot of these symptoms are quite opposite to what we normally see with drug overdoses involving cocaine and some of the other illicit drugs that we have out there. Then you have some of what we call analogs or different chemical versions of fentanyl. Carfentanil and W18 are 100 times more powerful than fentanyl, and which makes them really 10,000 times more powerful than morphine. Carfentanil, as you can see, is used primarily to tranquilize large game animals. Less than a grain of salt can be fatal to humans. W18 was discovered in Calgary in the early 1980s. It really has no commercial use. Nobody's ever found, because of its sheer power, any real viable use commercially. W18 is one of the 32 W compounds that have been identified, but it is certainly the most toxic and most dangerous. Recent testing shows that it is an analgesic and not an opioid, and many scientists believe that naloxone or Narcan, which I'll get into in the next couple of slides, likely won't have any effect on it to reduce the effects of opioid overdose.
And Tawfik, just to take it, so carfentanil and W18, have we seen those in the region of Peel?
Yes, Chief. We've seen 2 incidents in Ontario. One of them came back on a coroner's report from a sudden death investigation, I believe, in the early spring of this year. Naloxone, as I mentioned earlier, is a drug that is used today as primary treatment for an opioid overdose, including fentanyl. It was issued to all our officers in select civilian areas back in June of 2017. Although it's available in injection form, we chose to go with a nasal spray, which is much easier to use in the field. It's an antagonist for the opioid, which means that it blocks the opiate receptors. So when fentanyl and other opioids attach themselves to receptors, naloxone is proven to detach it and reverse the effects of that opioid overdose. It has been used by our officers in the field successfully, but however, we do stress to our officers that emergency medical care has to follow up. We can't just administer it. The person does regain consciousness. They have to go to a hospital, simply because the opioid and the fentanyl that we're dealing with may reattach itself and they overdose again on it. So they do have to go to the hospital. This is our temporary life-saving measure that we apply.
Sorry, Tawfik, I just want to interrupt again. So just so the board's aware, these were issued to the officers for officer safety issues. This isn't the officers trying to become paramedics in the region of Peel. This is actually for officer safety, but we found the officers have been using it on people within the community for life-saving efforts as well.
Thank you. And again, the visit to the hospital ensures that the recovery is long-lasting and not only temporary. So, as mentioned, we've issued it to our officers and select civilian staff. They've received the education and awareness they need regarding the dangers of opioids, of how to handle them, because we want to ensure the safety of our staff as well, and how to process them, and how to use Narcan, how to recognize an opioid overdose and when to administer it. We've also had meetings with our community partners, including the Salvation Army, who run the shelters in our area, to talk about their process to ensure that some of these drugs aren't entering their facilities as well. They've been extremely cooperative with us to ensure that their clients are safe as well. And as part of our proactive education and awareness, there are presentations given in the high schools about fentanyl from grades 9 to 12, and that's done through the Crossroads Youth Academy and with our partners at Safe City, Mississauga as well. This chart shows you the impact of fentanyl as we've seen it in our region. In 2014, you'll see 9 deaths attributed where fentanyl was either the primary or contributing cause of death in the victim. That rose to 10 in 2015, 23 in 2016, and 13 in 2017. Now, I have to qualify this by stating that the coroner's reports usually take 3 to 6 to 7 or 8 months to come back, so we will be accounting for opioid or fentanyl-related deaths where the drug was, again, primary or contributing factor to the death well into 2018 for the 2017 occurrences. Recognizing the dangers of opioids and fentanyl in our community, we've been actively working closely with other stakeholders to tackle this issue in our region. As you can see, we have partnerships and we've worked with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police earlier this year in setting up a conference in New York region for police leaders and executives from across Canada to discuss the fentanyl crisis. We also took part in an OACP, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police Symposium for middle managers and frontline officers back in November of 2016 to talk about the very facts and issues that we presented to you today in terms of how to recognize, how to investigate, how to handle the drug. And we found also extremely important our partnership with the Region of Peel and the Health Unit. We sit at the table at the Peel Opioid Surveillance and Urgent Response Stakeholders Group since the beginning of the year, and working with Dr. Kate Bingham and her team as well. That includes fire services, both Brampton and Mississauga, Region of Peel Health, as I mentioned, hospitals, and we meet regularly to create a region-wide surveillance and response system. And we're looking at different ways that we can monitor individually at our organizations as well as a region to clearly understand what the issue is, what the challenges are, and how to address them. And operationally, we have close working relationships with Mississauga Fire, Brampton Fire, Peel Paramedics, and the OPP, whereas we talk about our respective processes at scenes where we suspect clan labs or illicit drugs like fentanyl are being stored or processed, to make sure that when we do go in to investigate and seize the product, that we do it safely, not only for our staff, but for the surrounding neighborhoods, because sometimes these are residences, to make sure that the community is safe as well. And we have partnered with them a couple of times in the past year. So we continue to work with our partners because we appreciate the importance of this issue and its impact on our community. We're going to continue to work in 2018 and look for new opportunities as well to make sure that it doesn't have the dangerous impact that it potentially could have on our staff and our community. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Inspector. Norma first, and then Frank Dale.
Inspector.
Thank you.
I'm a nurse, and in the 1970s, when fentanyl was introduced for pain control, the major hospitals in Toronto, when the patch was introduced, 2 registered nurses signed that off on a narcotic sheet It was applied to the patient wherever the pain was. When that patch was removed, it was also signed, and the patient signed that they received this patch and will keep it confidential and not tell anyone, because even when it was removed after 2 or 3 days, it was still potent, and it had to be discarded in a special narcotic deposit. I am so amazed that fentanyl could now be used by the public in this kind of way. And so it is such a potent drug. Thank you so much for explaining, like even a grain of salt, that amount can cause your death. And what I'm hearing in the media is that our young people are really affected. Shortly before your presentation, we had the Air Force that gave accolade about how we're helping our young people. So I'm so proud of the work you're doing. And maybe in the future with these partners, we can get some more information out to the public, children in our middle school. Because amazingly, you have 12 and 13-year-olds just exiting middle school that are caught in drugs. So this is such a dynamic presentation and so much for us to take away, because until you say it's like a grain of salt, and I think back to my early practice as a nurse, when no one but the narcotic control agent could touch this drug. Thank you so very much. It is something that we all need to grasp. Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
emergency. Thanks.
Chair Dale?
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. Just out of interest is, have any of our officers been, by being in contact with this drug, been affected?
No, none that I know of, sir. I do know that they've received the training they need to be certainly careful in terms of not only if they know for sure that we have opioids or fentanyl, but even if they suspect it. We have processes in place where we ensure that they have the proper equipment. It is all available to them, that they reach out to our partners with fire and ambulance if they require it, so that regardless of the situation they go into, they're prepared for it. We have seized fentanyl, but unfortunately, though, it's been without incident.
Yeah, just one other danger to add to the list of doing your day-to-day job, I guess. The other question I had, too, is, to the best of your knowledge, how is most of these drugs being transported into our area?
A lot of them are coming in, some of it surprisingly is coming in through the mail. You can order it online. As long as it's under a certain amount, that it doesn't really raise suspicion. But we are having some of it, people are attempting to produce it locally here and throughout the GTA. But we're still getting an idea in terms of exactly what the processes are coming in. As I mentioned earlier, they do come in and try to bring it in inconspicuously in other shipments. And we rely on our other law enforcement partners at the borders through our liaison and collaboration to stay on top of those as well.
Okay, and I'm pleased to hear that there's a program with respect to education to our high school youth, but Norma raised a good point with respect to the middle schools. And are you aware of a program that we're introducing or helping with respect to that, to gain knowledge?
So I know that there are slides out there in our high schools. I believe in the middle schools. We do have youth education officers that go out to the grade schools, as you know, and the middle schools. I would have to check just to see exactly what the content is in the other schools. But the high schools have slides specifically speaking to this. This is a very dangerous issue, as I have kids in the schools in this region, and I appreciate the fact that they're getting the same information as well, not just from me.
Great, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor Jeffrey?
Thank you for the presentation. It's a pretty sobering presentation. So I had a couple of questions. When you say the officers are equipped, does that mean they're wearing gloves? Is that the only protection that the officers wear in these circumstances?
They have nitrile gloves, which are different than the ones you normally see, the latex gloves. They also have available to them N95 masks that they wear. And if they identify also they have C50 masks as well with the filters. But if they identify a situation where the danger for them could be higher than what that prepares them for, our specially trained Clan Lab team will come out, and they've got the next level up in terms of,
hazmat suits and stuff.
they've got all of that, and then, of course, the fire department, and if required, the OPP, who we work with, will come out as well.
I guess I'm just wondering from an operational or capital perspective, budget-wise, this is an additional expense for fire departments and police departments that really has never been anticipated. I just remember decades ago when I first got on council, we had 2 hazmat suits at the time, 2. One guy goes in and then he comes out and the other guy goes in, and they were at the time disposable. So the world has changed, and it's really changed the way we have to think about protecting our frontline workers. So that's interesting. You indicated that fentanyl can be the primary or secondary cause of death. Is the primary sometimes the result of the drug itself and the respiratory distress and the blood pressure? Is that the reason?
Yes, that's exactly it, and the coroner's report will tell us if how much was detected in the system, and if, in their opinion, it was the only drug or a combination of other drugs in the body.
Can you forgive my ignorance? When you administer the naloxone, is usually someone unconscious when you're administering it? Is that how you can produce the spray?
Yeah, as long as the person is breathing and the spray can be entered into the body, they look for the signs that we train our officers, as I mentioned, the symptoms that you saw on the screen, and then they administer it, and the effects should be rather quick. But again, we emphasize they have to be taken to hospital as soon as possible after that.
What's the response when it's quick? What is the response when it's quick? So they look like they're dead? Is that it? And I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, they're unconscious.
They're unconscious, and then this brings them around.
Yes. Now, having said that, the producer, or the manufacturer, distributor, Adap Pharma, indicates that if, in fact, they did not overdose on an opioid, but they're unconscious and exhibit some of those symptoms, and you administer Narcan, it has no negative effect if you don't have opioids in your body. So it's safe to use regardless.
That's good. So my request would be, this is a very interesting presentation, and I'm glad our middle school and high school are getting a presentation, but elected officials aren't. So I wonder if it would be possible to get this presentation to each of our respective councils, whether it's Mississauga and Brampton and Caledon, because I honestly think we're in this together, and a lot of us don't have the knowledge. We read about it and we're afraid of it, but I think we need to educate as much as possible all of the partners at the different level. Each of our agencies are responsible for making sure that our frontline service providers have the equipment that they need, and I don't think if we leave that conversation here, it really needs to spread. So my request would be if it would be possible to schedule it sometime in the new year, a presentation for councils. I think this would be very valuable. Thank you.
Chair, I'd just like to add, because there were some questions asked about the middle schools. As most of the board might know, the DARE program has been in place for many years, where an officer provides information for young people about drug use over a period of 5 weeks in an effort to, especially with the legalization of marijuana coming, in an effort to get some information out to the middle school children. Community Support is in the midst now of developing a program called Get Ready, which condenses the DARE program and is intended for grade 7s and 8s. And we've had meetings in the last couple of weeks with divisional commanders about using some of the bike officers when they come off the road in the wintertime, so that we can blitz the middle schools and get that program out to them. That's condensed from the DARE program, so we can reach more children in the process too. And obviously, the dangers of drugs in general beyond marijuana will be a point of topic when discussing these things with young kids.
Norma, you had another question?
This wasn't, thank you, Chair. It's not really a question. It was just a bit of elaboration around the middle schools because as we know, middle school children tend to teach their parents more than teenagers. At least that's what research has shown. So where a high school student may get this information and share it with their peers and their friends, middle school children go home and share it with their parents. So not only are we educating them, but we're also educating the community. And thank you so much, Deputy. I'm happy to know that we are focusing on our middle school also, because soon we have to take it even to a lower level. Thank you.
Chief, I know that you have very good relationship with the superintendent of the school boards. Is this a common topic of conversation to cooperate and help them do a better job of preventing this?
The DARE program and the RAID program, Reduce Awareness, like we've got all these programs in place that officers are being taught, officers are teaching in school, so this is a constant conversation as to the great work that's ongoing within the schools by the officers, so. Thanks, topic, that was excellent, thank you.
Oh, Sue McFadden, you have an
I
observation
do
or
have a
question?
question. Thank you so much for this presentation. But in your professional opinion, do you think that the other drugs are being cut by this, the fentanyl, to get the kids more hooked on it? Or is it pure fentanyl that you're seeing? Or is like ecstasy being cut with fentanyl?
So we've seen heroin cut with it, and cocaine as well. I would hate to see fentanyl, pure fentanyl out there. We would have certainly noticed a huge rise in terms of fatal overdoses, but it is almost always being cut with other drugs, yes.
Oh, I mean, that's a good thing, I guess, but it's not a good thing that it's being cut to get them hooked like that. Thank you. It's a shame.
Louise Mitchell?
Thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering, as a parent, if I wanted to learn more about this, is there any resources, like some of the information that's on this presentation, is it available on your website?
It will be.
Good answer.
In about an hour.
Good answer.
And then I'm thinking as a follow-on, if I wanted to find out more, like what kind of resources would be available to parents? Because back to teenagers are not going to come home and discuss this with their parents, right?
Our crime prevention website, they do programs on Tuesday nights down at Derry Road, so there's always opportunities to go to classroom situations and to say they fill it very quickly, and part of the topic of conversations is drug awareness as well, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector. Can I have a motion to receive? Sue McFadden, Norma Nicholson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Inspector Tawfiq, one more time. Appreciate you doing great work and keep doing it.
Thank you, Chair.
Our next application is on emergency support services, unmanned aerial vehicles, or so-called drones.
Morning, Chair. I just
Steve?
thought this is an important, so Sergeant Steve Roy from the Explosive Disposal Unit, Emergency Support Services, and Constable Mark Haywood, and I think Mark used to be a air traffic controller, so which is very important. We've also had officers who used to be pilots also involved in the work ongoing with this. So we thought we would, we've recently purchased the drones, and I won't take away the great presentation that Steve is going to present to you, just to talk about how Peel Police are going to use this in operations. Welcome, Steve. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Chair and members. I'd like to acknowledge Inspector Coghlan in the crowd as well for his leadership and support as we approach the launch of this new and exciting tool. Okay, so without further ado, here's the Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Unit Program. Let me click it there, Mark. Thank you. Some of the applications: search and rescue. It can rapidly cover large areas of green space in a short amount of time. It has a thermal camera that allows effective nighttime searching when visibility is poor. It can search areas that are hard to access by officers, improving officer safety. Collision reconstruction investigation. Some of our OPP partners have said that they've effectively reopened roadways 4 to 5 hours earlier with the use of this tool, which reduces strain on uniform officers, commuters, transit, and the trucking industry. Tactical advantages. It provides a bird's eye view that will enable safer entry for tactical officers into areas that have very minimal visibility, and it can identify suspects fleeing the area when officers are unable to surround a building or a residence. And emergency disaster response. It can rapidly obtain accurate and up-to-date pictures of an area with real-time updates. It will reduce the risk and safely identify and locate any survivors in the area. When there's large groups or parades or demonstrations, it can also identify any security or safety concerns. Our timeline, we currently have 12 operators or pilots. Chief mentioned Mark's one of them, an air traffic controller. We have certified pilots as well as a lot of drone collectors that are very, very good at the job. We've received 4 days of Aerion training. That's the company that we purchased from. And we've been trained at a ground school and a restricted operators radio license from Industry Canada. The Peel Police has been given a specialized flight operations certificate that was issued by Transport Canada for deployment. We've purchased a command vehicle, and we're currently working on media strategy directives and our IT management solutions, and we hope to be ready and responding to calls by mid-December. Data management and storage, we're going to govern by the Peel Police policy and processes, and all of our storage capability is already in place. Now the capabilities of the Sky Ranger. It's a very, very neat and cutting-edge tool. It can fly for up to 50 minutes on one battery, and we've purchased enough batteries to keep it up in the air for 24 hours if required. It's completely weather sealed, and it can operate in extremely high winds. If the wind is 55 kilometers an hour, we can still fly, and if we have wind gusts of 85 kilometers an hour, it can still stabilize and function properly. And helicopters won't fly in this type of condition. So it's an industry leader in all-weather capabilities, and no other UAV can do that. I didn't bring up the tablet, but it's basically a point-and-click touch-screen tablet. It's very easy to use. You can control the camera as well as navigate with it. You can update software. It's much easier than a joystick that has the potential for pilot error, where the tablet is very precise and it's touch and go. It just looks like an iPad. It launches quickly, as I mentioned. If we receive a call, we can have it in the air in under 5 minutes. And it's programmed to conduct a dynamic flight plans, including a follow-me protection grid or auto-grid mapping if required for certain scenes. It has a high-resolution camera, 30 times optical zoom, 60 times enhanced digital zoom, and beyond line of sight range is 5 kilometers, and it can recognize faces 1,000 feet away. It has a remote access viewing, so if there's a scene or an incident, a missing person, for example, detectives back at the station can view it live and assist during a investigation. We can do that up to 10 different units, different computers. And that's it. We're excited about it, and thank you very much for having us.
Honestly, taking it through very quickly to say this will have multiple uses, as you can see. Peel Regional Police over the last several years, even at nighttime with missing persons, we've often had to, if they've gone into the woods, and we've had to call in the York Regional Police helicopter sometimes, use their infrared cameras to look for people, and we've had success with that. So the unmanned aerial vehicle will help us reduce the costs associated to, getting York Regional Police helicopter up, and to say the time with it, the fact that we can deploy this so quickly for missing persons and any other things. So I think they may have questions for you, Steve, so you're not away to the
Sure.
races yet, so.
Sorry, I speeded through that. Sped through that.
Norma?
This is really exciting. In Peel, as you know, our population increasing in age. We have many individuals like over the age of 60, 70 that are now having dementia. Many years ago, you had to be in your 80s or 90s to have dementia, and they're seeing folks as young as in their 50s. Many go missing because not only are they denying that they have this disease, but they're no family for supports. And I know at Peel Police Services, we have a dynamic team that works in the community, and there's all kinds of devices that these residents could wear, but some do not wear it. So inevitable, we will have some missing. We also seem to have more young people going missing for whatever reason, and this is such a dynamic tool. I hope I live long enough to hear that. Maybe in 4 or 5 hours, when someone goes missing, we can locate that person. Because when you think of our inclement weather and how some of the elderly, they do die when they go missing for so long. So proud of what is being done, because I am also aging and you never know what it will be like. Thank you.
Mayor Jeffrey?
Thank you. It's a really cool tool, and this the fire department in Brampton has been using it a fair bit, and I know that the City of Toronto actually used it on that high building fire that they had down there, and actually it was very useful in the sense that they were able to see around the building, so they didn't put their officers in any danger. So to me, that has great opportunities. You spoke about the fact that you're able to launch it in about 5 minutes. I understand from our fire department that the Transport Canada is pretty restrictive about when you can put a drone out. So I understand that we want to be able to be nimble, but it sounds like there are well, at least from a fire perspective, that there are some strong restrictions about when you can use it. I only say that because I asked them to use their drone to take a picture of the Remembrance Day parade, because I thought that was a very nice visual, but they couldn't get permission to do that. So can you speak to the restrictions about when you can use it? It's not a blanket restriction as to when you can use it, but just, I think the public would like to know generally what the controls are around when you can use it.
Absolutely. We've been issued that SFOC, it's called. There's 85 strict conditions on it. It's been implemented into our directive as well. And I'm going to ask Mark to touch on one little section. He's the expert with it. But before we train or deploy, we're required to make 2 phone calls. And Mark probably would be the best to answer that with the specifics of what they're looking for. And we have to comply with that in order to fly.
Yeah.
Certainly. Thank you for your question, Mrs. Mayor. We have to do 2 phone calls. Essentially, we have to make a phone call to the London Flight Information Center. That gives us, we put what's called a NOTAM out. It's a notice to airmen. That allows us to fly in certain areas. There's restricted airspace, especially in the region of Peel, with dealing with Pearson International Airport, and so many small airports in the area. A lot of this airspace is restricted and we're not allowed to fly in it, but we can get special permission. So we make that phone call, we put out a NOTAM, which is, honestly, we have a template in place with London FIS right now, and it takes us literally seconds. We get on the phone, we tell them where we're going, what height we're operating at, what radius we're operating at, and they give us that NOTAM. So it just allows other aircraft that are going to be in the area to not go into that airspace. Our second phone call is to the supervisor of the Area Control Center in Toronto. Now that phone call is a simple message to them that we are going to be putting the drone up in a controlled airspace, and they will allow us to do that at a particular height. Yesterday we were operating at 300 feet. We have capabilities of going upwards of 400 feet, which keeps us out of the way of a lot of visual flight rules traffic, which have basically they can only fly at a certain height. We can't go above that height. So it keeps us out of that airspace.
So one of the interesting things that I know that some of our fire department uses it for is from training perspective. And particularly when you're doing ice rescues, a drone is very helpful in giving you that broader perspective. We used it in our last emergency preparedness exercise, and it's very helpful to give you a 360-degree view of how the operation is taking place. So I think it's a really helpful tool in making sure our resources are deployed to the right place. It just gives you an extra tool, and the fact that the battery lasts so long, that bad guy better stay out of sight because you're going to catch him. So thank you.
Well, the capabilities of keeping it airborne that long is excellent. I mean, we can launch a drone to a certain area, and if the battery runs out, we can launch a second drone and go directly to that area. So we can have basically coverage the whole entire time we're out there searching.
Thank you. Councilor McFadden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Considering our last presentation about the drugs and the issue that we're having in the region, does this drone have any capability of infrared for seeing inside and seeing that type of information that's being, maybe labs being operated in the region?
It does. The drug unit has specific tools for that as well. It does have infrared capabilities. I see this tool more being used as a search and rescue tool, infrared for body heat. However, it potentially could be used for that as well. But the drug unit has specific tools for that also.
Okay, I just thought that would be an excellent way to, when it consider heat, labs being operated within the region, it might be able to detect that.
Right,
So.
and the way this infrared works is it actually it won't give you a reading per se, like the fire department has a precise reading of the temperature. This infrared does a contrast. So if there's a difference in temperature, for example, if the sun was hitting a rock, it would show off. It would give an infrared signal, and it will with a heated vehicle or marijuana grow lab. It would differentiate. So it's a little different tool. It would do it, but there are more specific, better tools for that.
Okay, and are other municipalities or police services using the drone now?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I skipped over that. All our surrounding neighbors have the very same model, the Arion Sky Ranger, Halton, Peel, York, Toronto. Who am I missing? OPP. So for interoperability, it's perfect.
Well, good for you. Thank you very much for the presentation.
We all do cross-training on it as well, so we're all familiar with it.
Luis?
So it seems, given the size of the geography of Peel, I think you said we have 2, is that right? Or
yes.
So how do you know how many you need? Is there any sort of benchmark against geography?
We purchased, so we're gonna revisit it. I'm gonna say we find we're using it more and more than when we are looking at probably increasing our fleet of 2.
Okay. Thank you.
As Vice Chair Nicholson said, this is exciting stuff. I think you are probably at the forefront of technology used by different police services. And just like any other technology, my prediction is that you will find uses that you can't write down on a piece of paper today. That if you're sitting here 2-3 years down the road, you will have found how to use it and exploit this technology. So you are at the front leading edge of technology, and I think it's kind of exciting to be doing that as a part of what you do to serve the public. And I thank you for this presentation, and all the best, and we look forward to maybe seeing you in some time in the future to see how much more you have expanded your repertoire of skills and uses.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, may I have a motion to receive? Frank Dale, Linda Jeffrey, all in favor? Carried. Now, this is the end of the presentation, and we are into item 119. Yeah, I got that. Yeah, we have 19. Chair, could you please speak to the report?
I actually can do better than that. I have brought the IT manager. Welcome, Tony. Tony's sitting there so comfortably. Tony Ventura is the manager in IT, so I just thought he could either take us through this, or if there's subject to any questions yourself, Chair, or any of the board members may have. Welcome, Tony. Is there anything you just kind of want to give a little Reader's Digest of this report to just assist in understanding with it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you to the board. This report is the request to put together a purchasing agreement that's been negotiated by the Ontario Education Purchasing Consortium. So it's a broader sector organization that negotiates deals for behalf of all broader public sector. So on this specific arrangement, we are intending to purchase enterprise computer storage. So this is the type of, it's like a giant hard drive, if you will, and it's what we use to store all the data that we have. So we have a lot of video data, email, files, seized video for cases, and this, the main reason for having this contract is the storage that we currently have in place is reaching the end of its 5-year life. So at the end of 5 years, it's out of support and maintenance from the vendor, and it actually becomes much more cost-effective to replace it than to continue on servicing that old equipment. So this will enable us to move forward and replace that equipment. The other thing of note is the amount that's been requested in the report of $4.6 million is what we've spent over the last 5 years. So the intent is that we're going to hold flat on the purchase for the next 5 years and try to control our costs while at the same time increasing the capacity of our storage.
Louise?
Thank you. I'm wondering if you explored storage in the cloud.
We have, and there are certain applications for storage in the cloud where it makes sense. Some of the data that we have, we actually have to retain for a very long time, like 50 years. When you retain things that long, because it's an incremental tick charge over a long period of time, it does become quite expensive.
Okay.
The other challenge with the cloud is that some of our information is very transactional, so it's always being read and written as users using it. Email is a great example of that. There's very high transactions. The cloud at this point just isn't fast enough to keep up with that high transitional volume, but the cloud is something we're exploring very seriously for things that we that don't need so much transactions. So, for example, video is a very great example where it's recorded. It's usually accessed, and according to our analysis, we retain our video for 2 years. Within that 2 years, it's pretty heavily accessed within the first 9 months, and then for the balance of that, it's not really touched at all, but it's kept in regards to our retention schedule. So that's something that potentially a cloud would be an excellent candidate for. The one major consideration that we have around cloud is security. And there are some technologies up and coming that will allow us to securely put data in the cloud. From a technology perspective, I think everyone's familiar with encryption. So encryption requires a key. Today's cloud technologies, the cloud vendor has the key to your data. There are technologies right on the forefront where we will be able to encrypt the data, put it in the cloud, and then we retain the key. So that gives us certain protections around unreasonable, unlawful access to our data, but also would protect us against things like Patriot Act. So in that particular case, even if the U.S. government were to seize our data from the cloud, they would still have to come to us to get the key. So we would ultimately have that full control over our data. So it's that type of data sovereignty that we need and the data security that we need, but we're not just quite there yet.
Thank you.
Senator Jeffrey?
This isn't directly related to this contract, but one of the challenges that we discovered recently at the City of Brampton is that we hadn't considered, because the technology is changing so much, that a variety of people within the corporation of the City of Brampton purchase an application and use that application on their desktop. It's part of the storage system, whether it's the cloud or some other system. And the challenge for us as a city was to capture all those different applications that each person purchased individually. And it's hard to capture in your budget because it's often a subscription.
Yes.
So can you speak to how you manage that? There's a lot of loose ends in around how you capture the data. And I think it provided a lesson to the City of Brampton, but I think it's a lesson to be learned across corporations about how to control who has access to purchasing those applications and the impact they have on your data.
Yeah, that's a great point. Appeal, we do have a similar challenge. I think overall it's much more controlled. So, but we are surprised every now and again by someone bought something that we didn't know about and is using it for corporate data. About a year ago, we implemented a security technology to help protect us against malware and ransomware. So what this specific technology does is it takes an inventory of all the files on your machine, And then if it's not on your machine when we lock it, no new programs or applications can run. So the side benefit of that is we're protected now from malware, but no one can run anything unless we allow it, the IT department allows it. So from that perspective, you wouldn't be able to go to Staples, buy a piece of software, come back and use it on your computer, because it wasn't there when it was inventoried. It will be blocked.
What's the program called?
It's called, the technology overall is called application whitelisting, and we specifically have chosen the product Carbon Black from Bit9.
Carbon Black?
Carbon Black.
Good to know.
Good to know, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now you can see why I brought Mr. Ventura.
You're thinking, "Whew, I didn't know the answer to that question." Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ventura, so much. I think it's always, and to me, it's very heartening that we are using the common sense thing of piggybacking on larger contracts. And wherever you can do and it makes sense, it always ends up saving money. And you capture on not only the economy of scale, but all the troubleshooting they've done and so on and so forth. So thank you very much for doing a great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, appreciate that.
Thank
You would not have mentioned the word carbon black. There's a different connotation.
But I would not have remembered it this morning.
Do I have a motion to accept? Louise Mitchell, seconded by Sue McFadden. All in favor? Carried. Item 120, purchasing provision of public safety LTE broadband data system. This is one of your
Good morning.
favorite subjects,
I think-
Chief.
That's right, VCOM, and I say many years ago I used to be able to talk about VCOM, but right now I don't have to because I have Acting Manager Susan Payne coming forward. And good morning, Susan. Thank you for coming here to help me with this, because this is also a topic that don't think I would ever be able to bluff my way through. So I think it's better to have you come forward and answer any questions or speak to the issues. Thank you very much for coming.
Not a problem. Thank you very much, Chief Board. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Approximately in 2008, a band was released to the general public, a radio band. In 2014, this was investigated by the Canadian government and was determined that this would be good for public safety. So this would be a band that would be available for us to use in the public safety arena in an LTE situation similar to your cell phone. So this would allow us to create a core, to create a network that is all related to LTE. There's security, there's functionality all there, there's data applications that we can use. It will involve us, excuse me, it will involve us to build a network on our current VCOM network. It is a contract that is to give the award to Motorola, who is our current vendor of record and has provided us with all the functionality that we have seen over the last number of years, 20 plus years. And we are looking forward to the opportunity to build a network here within the region of Peel and use the core that is available in Halton. Halton Regional Police recently got an arrangement with Motorola, and they are now going forward with putting the core in their area, and we will be partnering with them to use that core.
Susan, so just so if I could just put it in layman's terms, because that's how I was always doing it when I was dealing with Lloyd Addis before, was, so a few years ago there was the Air France disaster, and it occurred within view of everyone on the 401. It was the afternoon traffic, so everyone started phoning 911 systems, and the system went down.
Absolutely.
So this public safety network will allow police and emergency responders to no longer lose their communication systems. Back then, all systems went down because everyone in the public and we were on the same system, so we couldn't communicate with each other because the system kind of didn't really crash. So is that a good example?
That's
of how to
an
explain it?
excellent example, and there's a number of other examples as well. You can liken it to the fact that when you use your cell phone, sometimes you can't get signal, you can't get service, and we can all relate to that when we use our cell phones. This would provide us with the opportunity to have our own devices, our own network that we share only with the public safety agencies within the region of Peel, the VCOM agencies, but also using the core that's in Halton. that we are proposing that we go forward with, we'd have interoperability. So therefore, we could roam in and out of the two regions. We could work closely with the fire departments within the region of Peel and the police departments. We could all arrive at a scene, at an incident, and we could all share data using devices that are LTE respective. So this is we would have to have band 14 devices. So it's a SIM chip, just like you have a SIM chip in your cell phone. It would be a chip that would listen to the frequency that's out there that would be for public safety and public service. And the national idea is we build a national network. There's currently one being proposed in Ottawa. There's one, a test core being built in Ottawa. There was one in Calgary that was dismantled after their 3-year pilot project. So they're going through a procurement process right now. And there is now in Halton, as of September, they received their approval to go forward with their core. And the proposal is to share that core, and the vision is to expand the core federally, just like we can do now. We can get off a plane in Vancouver and we have access to an LTE network. And we could be connected here via that network, and it would be it's something the federal government is looking at. There's an RFI now to sort of look at the whole backbone issue. But for us, because nobody has yet used this band 14, if the public safety area wants to come forward and we want to show our leadership, we want to show the opportunity for Peel Police and the Halton Police to come together and to form a partnership with governance and work towards the frame. But currently right now, we want to work together with Halton, and using the Motorola infrastructure, which we both have, makes things significantly much simpler and much more cost effective.
Louise Mitchell.
Thank you. Is there any risk that because it sounds like the national framework or blueprint hasn't been decided, is there any risk in choosing this technology that something else could be chosen that wouldn't be compatible?
The technology, thank you for the question. That's a very valid question. The technology is currently available as far as getting everything up and running. We have made application to ISED, or Industry Canada as it was previously known, and we have been granted an experimental license. That is the only licenses that they are providing to any agency within Canada. We are building this network out to show the leadership, to show that this can be done. This is an opportunity for us to partner with someone who is very forward-thinking as well, and wants to show that this is an opportunity for us to get together. We can form the framework, we can form the governance, and we can work with whatever framework they put forward. Now, what we're proposing is it's called 3GPP standard. So all of the equipment that would be used to build out our sites are the standard equipment. So as I said, we do have the experimental license. It has been granted to us to use for this pilot project if we go forward with this. And under the understanding that, of course, things could change, but the standard is set.
We'll be watching our because I know from a presentation when I was down at the Major City Chiefs, FirstNet have got the system down in the States. I think they've got 35 of the 50-odd states on. They've got 18,000 police services down there trying to all connect on a public safety network as well. So that's on the AT&T system. So I know that they have been up to Ottawa to try to get the Canadian government to come down to see what's going on in the States. And I would say Ottawa, public safety, would be watching what's going on in Halton and Peel then, right?
Absolutely, yeah. This is gaining a lot of national attention, certainly. There's been a lot of presentations. There's been a lot of people that have attended these presentations and speaking directly with Halton and with, under the understanding that Peel is very interested in moving forward with this here. Yes, absolutely. Within VCOM, we have certainly Peel Police. We have the City of Brampton Fire. We have the City of Mississauga Fire, the Township of Caledon's Fire. We have CBSA, so that's the federal agent, the Canada Border Services, Canada Border Services at Pearson Airport, so that's a federal agency. We have Electra. We have the City of Mississauga's transit and non-emergency services. So we have 8 partner agencies that all share in the current radio system and would also share in our new LTE network should we go forward with this.
So you answered one of my questions, which was who are it wasn't just police, it's everybody else.
Absolutely.
Should this be approved, could you perhaps come and present to our various councils for them to know about this? Because I think we need to be, as councils, apprised of this pilot and what the impact will be. That would be my first question.
Absolutely.
One of the challenges with emergency I have found in the past is that the equipment doesn't work in certain areas. Even though you'll have this dedicated broadband channel, there are parts of the cities that, so for example, years ago, when there was an emergency at Peel Memorial in the city of Brampton, the phones didn't work inside the hospital. Do we still have that challenge for our first responders?
The challenge does exist, certainly today, and certainly within in-building systems. The challenge does exist in very built-up areas. We are doing a number of things to assist in that with in-building systems, DVRS systems. We are trying to expand inside. We're working with the City of Mississauga, certainly, to go in their underground systems, the City of Brampton. We work with Osler Hospital. We do all of that. So there are a number of challenges. This particular project will be focusing on above-ground communications. It's going to reside on our 9 current towers. So we won't, for the purposes of the pilot, we won't have 100% coverage. We will have a very high level of coverage, certainly in the majority of our areas. That would be sort of the next phase. If we do go forward with this into a production scenario, we would be looking at, potentially building more towers or seeing how we could improve the coverage. But to answer your question, it does still exist in certain areas, but there are a lot more technologies now that we're aware of and that we implement to assist with boosting the signal inside certain areas.
So I think that's the longer-term issue. That's a challenge that
It is a
we
challenge.
need to identify those areas, and as cities, I think it's incumbent on us to put this in our capital plans to find ways to improve the signal for our first responders. So,
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I think Lloyd Addis came and spoke to this a few meetings ago. He also talked about maybe getting the developers, when they're doing their proposals, that they include it in their costs as well. So
I'm all over that part of it.
thought you would be.
But at the end of the day,
in the bylaw scenario, that would
if
be
council
wonderful.
don't understand it,
Absolutely.
they won't ask for it, because right now, okay, we've always had a problem where council tries to be more accommodating to the development community and tries to find ways to make it easier for them. This is not going to make it easier. It's going to add a cost. It will be unpopular. So you need to start tilling the soil to prepare us for those tougher decisions.
need to
'cause
advocate,
We must
absolutely.
talk about it because it does have a financial impact, but we have an obligation to make sure that for our first responders can talk to each other when something is happening. So this is serious. You also touched on you're going to use existing towers. So there's 9 towers now. So if you need additional towers, that will be politically unsavory and difficult to talk about. But we need to prepare people that in order to get your first responders there, you may have to consider as our city grows. So I think this is another conversation you need to have with councils, just in a preparatory way of we're in the middle of a pilot. This is what they've done externally elsewhere. We may have to change the service, and additional towers may need to be sought. I just know it's controversial, and it has implications, so we just need to prepare that.
Absolutely. We built 2 new, well, one is just in process now, and we just recently built one in Brampton up at the Heart Lake Recycling Facility there. So that's a new tower there. So yes,
And the good point was it's not around residential areas, so.
We do our best. We do our best to identify areas, on top of apartment buildings or certainly away from from the public. However, the signal that we run is quite a high signal. But nonetheless, yes, you're right. It's a challenge to find a location and then to secure that location.
And we all want better service, but we don't want you to build anything in order to provide that service.
Absolutely.
So can you just elaborate a little bit on the objectives of the project include designing and building the pilot LTE infrastructure? What does that mean? Is that just the back house kind of infrastructure you need internally in the organization? Okay.
That's absolutely right. What we're proposing is putting up on the current existing VCOM towers. We're proposing putting up the LTE antennas there. That would be available for to build out that network. Also, therefore, we would then connect that. The 9 towers are RAN, it's called a RAN. We would therefore connect that to the Halton core, and therefore that would be all of the infrastructure that's built out in the background. This proposal also has some user gear, some devices for the cars, some devices for handheld portable devices as well. There's some training, and in this particular service, for the purposes of this pilot, it would be a managed service as well. So we would work with Motorola. They would maintain the system on our behalf for the pilot, with the understanding and training that we would look towards the future, going more towards our own control again.
Sorry, just to bring it down to my level again. So LTE is long-term evolution. So
Correct.
It's not just the phone communication, it's data transfer.
Very, very important. Absolutely right, Chief. Thank you.
And it's important for new generation 911. NG 911, you'll often hear about in the news, is the fact is at some point in the future, police and emergency services will be responsible for, people are going to want to send us pictures, send us videos, and so this is in building the structure so we can be able to accept this on our new data plan.
That's right. This is the public safety data plan.
Yes.
This is future-proofing us for all the data. We had a previous presentation with the drone. The drone will be streaming video that could be securely transmitted on the LTE, our private LTE network, the public safety network. It's fully encrypted. It's fully, therefore, available. It's interoperable. We can share it with, if it's in Halton, we can see it here if it involves anything that's any people moving between regions. So yes, it's future-proofing. It's data, very, very strong component as we move forward. As we know, there's a lot of new applications coming forward that are very data-intensive, and this would be sort of our own network, our own pipe that we can use to transmit all of that data.
Last question. Is there an expectation following the pilot that, because right now it's being hosted in Halton, will there be an expectation if we approve this and we have a good outcome that it would be hosted in Peel, that we would need some investment by us in a Peel headquarters location for this to be hosted?
That is one of the items that we're going to take a very good look at with this pilot. What are the implications of hosting that, using a hosted core? Also, because this is something that we're going to be building out, the intent is to build it out, nationally. We could potentially host a core, and we could be a backup, a DSR site for the Halton core or even the Ottawa core. There is opportunities there. We took advantage of the opportunity to share and partner with the Halton Regional Police for this particular pilot, but that would be definitely something that we would be looking at. Would it be of any value? What's the upsides, the downsides, what the cost effectiveness of hosting it here or elsewhere?
Sorry, you elicited another question. From a backup perspective, when the data is hosted in a place, it's not in the cloud or wherever it is that the backup for our data in Halton?
No, the data will never be residing in Halton. It is processed there.
Processed, okay.
Every agency will have its own sort of access point, and that is where the data will reside in there, and then it will be just sent, encrypted, and then returned back via the network. So that's how we go out across all of the different regions. No, we will not be giving away the data. The data will always be with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Jeffrey, the answer is carbon black.
Good product.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you coming
Thank you.
down and telling us about this work that you're doing.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We will make arrangements for City of Brampton, City of Mississauga to get Susan and I to go forward to get down to my level, because to say, I think it was 2008 when I worked in that.
Chief, you won't be the only person who needs to have that conversation simplified. Thank you.
Point noted.
Can I
Thank
have a-
you.
Can I have a mover to receive this report? Linda Jeffrey, seconded by Norma Nicholson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Are we down to the last item? Okay, this is the last item, and this is where we get Mr. Rob Serpe to go through this thing and explain to us some of the innovative changes he's made to the schedule.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think they're too innovative, but as people know, at the last board meeting, each year we approve the schedule for the following year. Next year is a bit of a different year as there is municipal elections in October. As such, we made a few revisions to sort of the normal way that the schedule is laid out. There's the same amount of meetings that we had scheduled for this year. We normally had a hold in October as a potential date to follow up on the budget, but with the inclusion of a permanent budget committee, we don't think we'll need that hold anymore. So we've removed that hold, as that is the same month as the municipal election. And because of the election and the timing, we've moved up the normal September board meeting into August this year. So we're going to force people to have to work a little bit throughout the summer. Nobody should have any problems with that. And then the only other thing is we always have a date in the schedule for a board and PRP offsite. We have that in as the 24th and 25th of May. I've had conversation with Chair Dale. He's mentioned that the 24th is a regional council day. So I'm going to suggest to the board that we move those dates to May 17th and 18th. So it doesn't align itself with the long weekend. The long weekend starts the following weekend on the Monday. Okay, so we'll hold that. We'll revisit the May days then. But otherwise, those are the dates.
Chair, I know Rob and I were communicating just about I had some concerns just regarding the lack of a September or October board meeting, only because of the schedule for our budget for 2019. So I just would ask that at some point, because I say we have cutoff dates that we have to follow from the region, then at some point, if we find out we need to have a date, we'll have to have an emergency meeting. And I know the board's always been very good at calling those meetings as well, just to get approval for the budget, because that was my concern when I looked at the calendar.
Sure, and so this could be more good news for the budget team at PRP. I've confirmed again with Chair Dale and with the regional clerk that legally, once an election takes place, the current regional council cannot consider the budget, and they don't anticipate budget meetings the 2019 budget starting until January of 2019. So that should buy PRP more time.
That's great, but there's one caveat. By the Police Services Act, the Region Appeal through Council directs when we submit our material and the format of the material. So as long as the Regional Appeal staff through Council give the board a date that's after November 23rd, will be okay. But if they ask for the budget before that date, that's when we might have to. Okay. Thank you.
If it is very clear that there's a date that's needed, then we can probably start putting it in the schedule now. But otherwise, I think from what I gather, this schedule will meet. And as Rob said, I'm very hopeful that now that we have a budget committee, it'll make the task of the board a little bit easier. Okay. So what we're going to look at is this schedule, except for the May, which Rob is going to look into that and come back with a different date. Okay. So motion to Sue McFadden, seconded by Louis Mitchell, all in favor? All right, this concludes the public portion of the board agenda. Thank you very much for coming here, and those watching at home, thank you very much for watching. And we'll take a 5-minute break. We reconvene at 11:35. Thank you.